Good evening. My name is Sara Judson. I'm with the Community Foundation for Southwest Louisiana, and we are so honored to be with all of you tonight here at the lovely West Cal Event Center. What a special place, and that does amazing work. We are pleased to be able to be hosting you here tonight at the West Cal Event Center. And I want to remind you of how we got to this place of being able to just imagine Southwest Louisiana. The fall of 2020, if you think back to a little bit after August 27th, and we got a call from the office with David Philo. Some of you may already know that part of the story, but David grew up in Moss Bluff. After going to Sam Houston, to Tulane, to Stanford, he created a little thing called Yahoo with a friend. And so kind of the rest is history. But normally, David and his wife Angela do all of their philanthropy in the San Francisco area where they live and raise their family. And after Hurricane Laura, they decided they wanted to support David's hometown and that area. And they asked the Community Foundation to steward their gift of $2.5 million to build a more resilient and thriving area. So we were able to visit with many stakeholders and find out what was most important to people from all walks of life, to elected officials, to people all around Calcasieu and Cameron as the two areas most devastated by Hurricane Laura and then Delta. And so we came up with the idea to do a master plan for both parishes that would help us build the more resilient and thriving region, and not just for right now, but for the future, for the next 50 years. So what an opportunity we have to impact our whole area and in a variety of ways. So we are so pleased that you're here tonight to help us as we just imagine the future for our area and for people to want to be here and raise families and come here to work and stay. And one of our main partners has been our elected officials, including your mayor here in Sulphur, Mike Danahay. And that is what is so key, is that this is a team effort. We've had high school kids involved and people from all over, and people like Mayor Danahay are helping us move this forward. So I'd like to ask him to come up and say a few words of welcome. Thank you so much.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for being here this evening. Your presence here shows that you care not only about West Calcasieu, but all of Southwest Louisiana. This is a program that is, like was said, put together by the Community Foundation, partnering with Urban Design Associates to come up with a plan that, like for the next 50 years, will change our whole region in a positive way, of course. And so we're going to, we've been working with them as well as other stakeholders to be able to come up and design a plan that hopefully we'll have more public input on, as your presence here tonight proves. So thank y'all for being here. At this time, I'd like to call up Megan O'Hara with Urban Design Associates.
Thank you, Mayor Danahay, and thank you everyone for spending your evening with us. It's so encouraging to see all of your faces. Some of you, this is the first time that you're with us to learn about these projects, and some of you have been here every step of the way. And I want to acknowledge that level of passion and dedication that you feel for your region, so that we can all, come together, work together to actually start to see things happen in the next 10 years that will then catalyze the 50 years of resilience. So we're going to go through a presentation tonight of about 30 minutes, and then we're going to invite you to move around the room and look at these projects in more detail. We want you to be thinking critically and asking questions of our experts and giving us your honest feedback, because this is an inflection point in this plan where after this week, we're going to go back and start firming up those recommendations. So you are here at an important point, and what you say and what you ask us tonight is actually going to influence what is put into the plan. So this is the overview of the process, and you can see that we started back in October of last year, and some of you remember we were here in November for a big listening session. We were here in March unveiling these 10 projects, these 10 catalytic projects. The things that you told us in March have shaped the projects and where they are at today, and we are here tonight doing what we call a feasibility workshop. The reason we call it a feasibility workshop is because the last thing anyone wants or needs is a plan that sits on a shelf and can't be implemented. So we've been focused on understanding what is it actually going to take to make these projects feasible, implementable, and for us all to see them happen. Some images of that incredibly energetic meeting back in November. We kicked off this public process in West Cal in November, and you told us what you love about living in Southwest Louisiana. The beautiful natural areas, the amazing culture and food and festivals and the people. You also told us about the problems, drainage, infrastructure, housing that's becoming too expensive for most families, and you told us what you want to see, which is largely quality of life. Bike trails and pathways and places to go with your family, as well as restaurants and entertainment and outdoor recreation. And we took all of that into account. So there were 7 or 8 different sources that we used to get input. And through that input, we talked with over 1,700 people and received over 4,000 comments. Those helped us develop these 5 statements for Southwest Louisiana. I gotta turn around. A diverse and strong economy, resilient housing, collaborative community planning, meaning we are going to have to work together to do these things, a strong and diverse economy, already said that one, unique natural and cultural resources, and reliable and resilient infrastructure. There were other themes that we don't have listed here tonight, but we took those themes and we developed the 10 catalytic projects directly from what you told us in November. We came back in March. We were in this room on St. Patrick's Day. Everyone was dressed in green and was very generous to spend that evening with us. And then we also, in addition to that, launched a survey afterwards and had ambassadors take that survey out to your employers, through the libraries, through the schools, met with the high school students again. We updated the Hello Lamppost signs that were around the community in the text campaign. And we had over 700 people respond to that survey and collected over 1,300 comments. And based on that input, we have refined the 10 catalytic projects, and we're bringing them back to you tonight in a more refined state for you to give input one more time. Just as a reminder, we needed to define catalytic because a lot of things are happening and investments are being made, but they're not necessarily visible. So we want these catalytic projects to be things that when your family members come or someone comes from out of town and you're driving around, it catches their attention and you say, oh, what's going on here? Looks like a really interesting place. Let's go explore. They also need to be able to be started or substantially completed in 10 years because we're talking about a 50-year time frame. We need to see some change happen very soon. And so we've put these on timelines and we've started to think about what can happen, in 6 months, in 1 year, in 2 years, in 5 years, in 10 years. And they need to improve quality of life, infrastructure, and your economy. We're trying to move into this positive cycle of growth where we make Southwest Louisiana better for the people that live here today. Improve the quality of life, bring those amenities that you told us you need and want. And not only is that going to serve you all who live here and have stayed and been here through some very hard times, it's also going to make it easier for employers to attract new employees and new residents to your area. And as you can attract new residents to the area, you have more tax income, you can support better amenities like bigger and different grocery store chains and different retail stores, and that brings more tax revenue in to then be able to reinvest in your quality of life. So we want to get on this positive cycle for reinvestment. So tonight we're going to go through these 10 catalytic projects, Before I do that, I wanted to acknowledge for everyone and tell you, if you weren't aware, there have been a series of 11 articles on the front page of the American Press. Many of those authors are here tonight, including Mayor Danahay, who wrote about strong downtowns and what that could mean for our region. So we encourage you to go read those articles if you haven't had a chance to. And then a reminder of what we are talking about in this feasibility workshop. What are the elements and aspects of these projects that we need to get down to the details in to make them implementable? It includes, how big are these projects? How much will they cost? What are the timelines? What are the concrete action steps? And who are the partners that are going to be responsible for those implementation steps? We also need to talk about what regulations and policies need to be changed and adopted. And all of these things together will be on the boards as you walk around the room, and you can ask additional questions. We have heard this question, so we want to address it. How will these projects be funded? And most of them are going to be a combination of funding sources, but there is a once-in-a-generation opportunity that you have right now with some federal funding sources coming your way that are going to give you the base funding to build upon in your region. So you have over $1 billion of recovery funding allocated for Southwest Louisiana. It took a lot of effort to get that allocation, and the money is coming, and you're going to start seeing those effects and positive impacts. Let's try to put some of that money towards these priorities that you've identified. There's also $550 billion in the Federal Infrastructure Act. Now that's for the whole country, but 40% of that is going to be brand new programs that are competitive, that haven't existed before. And they can fund safe streets, more walkable streets, crosswalks, drainage, shade trees in your strong downtowns and your street transformations, all things that you said were priorities. And then there are housing bills and housing grants that are competitive that have larger allocations than we've ever seen in the past. So some very, very critical opportunities, and I think the time is right for Southwest Louisiana to start taking advantage of. When we say public-private partnership, what does that mean? Are private investors gonna pay for streets? Our city is gonna be giving money to development? How is this going to work? When we talk about these catalytic projects, they're really a collection of projects. There are going to be public investments in the right-of-way, public investments in parks, public opportunities to apply for those federal grants, public buildings that will be built, and then there are going to be private investments that co-locate with the public investments. So you might have a restaurant that has 2 locations in your region, and they say, I'd like to open a third. Well, it makes sense to do that next to this brand new beautiful street that's being revitalized in, say, downtown Sulphur or in Vinton. There would also be an interest from employers. So in the Nellie Lutcher district, Acadian Ambulance decided to locate on Enterprise Boulevard and bring jobs and education to that corridor, and they want to see more of this positive investment happen so that other employers will co-locate there. And then you will have nonprofit projects such as the Performing Arts Theater for the region, and they will do fundraising and implement those projects. And then you have philanthropy and grant dollars at the top that can help cover costs that no other source can cover. So together, there'll be a complicated funding stack, but they'll come from public sources, from private investors, from nonprofits, and from foundations. Okay, so we're gonna move through these 10 projects, and I wanted to point something out. As you go around the room and look at these boards, there's a turquoise box and a blue box, and the turquoise box says, what does this mean for Calcasieu Parish? So for each one of these, you may be thinking, that doesn't really apply to me. But on each project, you can go and read how it actually applies to Calcasieu Parish, even if it doesn't seem like it's front and center as we walk through these. The first slide that you see here are the results from the 700 survey responses. And we asked people, do you think that this project In this case, we're talking about coastal risk reduction. That's in both Calcasieu and Cameron Parish. Do you think this is going to benefit the region? And 92% of people said absolutely yes. So a huge amount of support for reducing your risk and starting to protect your assets in the region. This is the biggest project. It has the biggest price tag, it has the longest timeline, and because of that, we wanted to show how you can create a layered approach and start to do some things very early. So in the first couple of years, you could actually do a feasibility study. You could think about some conceptual designs for some of the earlier, we have a phase 1A and 1B, those early elements that can build up the layered approach before you get all of the funding for the big structured elements here. Again, there's a timeline for Calcasieu, a timeline for Cameron, but this is going to be a long-term investment. The southeast of the state has received a lot of investment in terms of levees and structured coastal protection, and it's happening in your neighboring state of Texas, but the southwest of Louisiana has not received the same level of investment, and we think that all of these other investments you're about to make need to be protected before you spend billions of dollars in your region. For each of these projects, we have identified both potential partners and those public funding sources. So as you move around the room, you can take a look at those lists and get into the details and let us know if we've forgotten anything, but we're trying to cover all the bases here so that everyone is aware of the funding sources that are going to help start funding these projects. There's also a sense of how, so 92% of people said, yes, this will benefit the region. Well, how? It's going to protect your property and assets. It's going to protect homes, and in some cases, it will lower flood insurance. Quality of life, there's an opportunity for walkways and bike connections and putting bathrooms and parking at some of your beaches. So opening up those assets in those beautiful natural places by making them more accessible. In terms of your natural and cultural resources, it's going to prevent saltwater intrusion and land loss and truly protect your natural marshes in Cameron Parish, but also up into Calcasieu as well. And then in terms of infrastructure, those hard structured elements of this are true infrastructure when you start talking about gates and flood walls and things like that. And there's a layered approach that Stantec is available to talk more about. And then there's some next steps, the most important of which is coordinating with CPRA, who's in the middle of adopting their 2023 Coastal Master Plan. So our team has been coordinating with them and trying to get more of this incorporated into that plan so that it can be in line for funding. The second project is waterfront development, and this is inclusive of all of your waterfronts. It means Lake Charles and the Calcasieu River. It also means your smaller bayous and the development that could happen in Cameron Parish down on the coast. A very strong level of support. 97% of people think that waterfront development would benefit your region. And there's a number of things around the Calcasieu River and Lake Charles that can get started fairly soon. You have the Port Wonder development, you have the Crying Eagle development, you have the renovation of the parking garage and Paul's Rib Shack, you have Horseshoe Casino that's under construction right now, and so those elements are going in as we speak. And we're proposing an expansion of that, additional development sites that could add up to 50 acres. And we think that you're going to start to see change in the next couple of years, but by 5 or so years, you would really be seeing that vibrant waterfront development. In addition, you can connect up over 4 miles of walking and biking trails, starting from the Civic Center, up along the beach, up and over your brand new beautiful I-10 bridge with a walking and biking path, and then down a pedestrian and bike ramp to the West Lake side and up and down the waterfront along Calcasieu River from Horseshoe Casino north of that bridge. So we think that would be spectacular and transformative for the area. And like we said, it's building on those things that are already in the works and bringing more restaurants, more entertainment, and more places for families to come and enjoy. So I'm gonna skip over sort of the details. Like I said, these are on all of the boards, and we encourage you to walk around and see them. This is going to drive economic development in the area, because as people are driving past on I-10, they're going to see this amazing, beautiful waterfront development. Think about stopping here for lunch, thinking about coming in to this area that can be a gateway for ecotourism and start to drive additional jobs, additional tax revenue for your area. There's also an opportunity for mixed-use housing above retail, and you can, like we said, improve quality of life with your trail system, and then on the natural resources, you can actually fortify the edge of the coastline around the lake and improve some of your drainage in the new development. And then infrastructure, you'd be building new streets and improving drainage as well. There's some next steps here that include coordinating with DOTD as they finalize their design for that new bridge and making sure that the ramp configuration maximizes access to all of this new development so that we can have this vibrant, buzzing destination where you could arrive by boat or car or foot or bicycle. So the third project is about building quality housing for all. And in this case, we're talking about one demonstration project just north of Prion Lake Mall in the Lake Street area of Lake Charles. But this is a model that can be replicated at a smaller scale in other parts of Calcasieu Parish and beyond. So we still have 3/4 of people feeling strongly that this project would benefit the region, and then a good number of people who weren't quite sure and needed a bit more information. So overall, this is still a strongly supported project. The demonstration project has a tighter timeline because it's tied to a federal grant that would be complete in about 7 years. And that grant could, the grant is for about $40 million, but it could bring $200 million of investment to that area north of Prion Lake Mall. There are very clear partners and very clear funding sources, and like we said, this could be a demonstration project that could be replicated at a smaller scale throughout the region. Like we said, this is going to bring hundreds of millions of dollars of economic development, and it also pairs up workforce development training for residents, brings all of the partners to the table, and helps support entrepreneurship and jobs in that area. It could build 500 to 700 units of brand new housing that would serve both housing authority residents, workforce level households that might be people who are working but making less than the area median income, and it builds additional market rate housing. The housing is beautiful. There's new parks and bike trails, new streets with good drainage, and it also could connect to the BAYOU Greenbelt, which is just to the west of the project. The fourth project is the Nellie Lutcher District, which would continue to grow as an arts and cultural district along Enterprise Boulevard between I-10 and Broad Street. And great support for this project with 90% of people saying thumbs up. This is going to benefit the region. This is one that's already begun. You have employers there. You have the city of Lake Charles building the Nellie Lutcher Memorial Park, and there's an opportunity to take Enterprise Boulevard and Common Street and turn them into more walkable, bikeable streets with street trees, and to co-locate cultural uses like a new Mardi Gras museum and potentially that performing arts theater in this area. So start to grow that district as part of an arts and culture hub with wine bars and restaurants and destinations that people could once again get off of I-10 if they're traveling through, get some gas, get some lunch, and enjoy the region in the meantime. It's I would say a mid-sized project, but something that's very achievable, and there are some of those infrastructure sources that can help to transform the streets. This is truly an economic development project. We talk all the time about the I-10 corridor and what it looks like to drive through there. This would give you a node along the I-10 corridor close to North Lake Charles where you can get like we said, some food and beverage options and some development that looks new and clean to attract people to come off of the highway. We can use your Restore Louisiana monies to help the homeowners in the surrounding neighborhoods make repairs to their homes. And then all those cultural resources that we talked about, co-locating in one location and getting that synergy so that there's a clear place that people are congregating and using it as a gateway into other tourism opportunities in the area. So some next steps here are largely around implementing those street improvements and starting to build those facilities like the Mardi Gras Museum. You know, maybe it has a king cake bakery or a costume designer space or a place for people to buy beads and things like that. So deeply embedded in the culture of Southwest Louisiana and a great accelerator for an arts district. The next project is around the McNeese University area, and that word area is very important. We're talking about the campus, but we're also talking about the edges of campus and a little bit beyond. How can that area that is low-lying have better resiliency, handle drainage and water better, and be safer and more enjoyable for students? There is housing being built across difficult roads to cross. It's not necessarily the most walkable place on the edges, and it certainly needs more restaurants and more things for students to do. So very strong support on this project. Even people who said, I don't necessarily go to that part of town, think that this is transformative for your region. And again, this is something that is starting right now. You have the university partnering to build the LNG Center for Excellence right north of the Seed Center. You have McNeese University finishing out phase 1 of the Contraband Bayou project, and they have a phase 2 and a phase 3 planned. And you have an opportunity to take Common Street and change that into a street that has shade trees and a bike ped path and better crosswalks for students. And then there might be an opportunity to take the first true phase of BAYOU GREENBELT and go to the east of Common Street, create a walking path for students to get all the way to the athletic complex and to cross over McNeese Street safely. By calling this a resilience district, that may open up additional funding sources or help you be more competitive for the grants. And I think we all know that McNeese and SWLA are huge economic generators and engines in your region. We need quality programs that students move to your region for, and employers paired up so that there are jobs available for those students when they leave. And they want to have a good time and a quality experience while they're in university, and that means we need to think about the environment that they're in. There's also an opportunity to have a presence for McNeese in downtown Lake Charles or somewhere along I-10. We've seen this be incredibly meaningful in other cities where a university or a community college has a building or a small portion of campus in downtown that can engender different partnerships between businesses, give students another experience, and make a more cohesive and connected economic development opportunity. Some next steps here in terms of moving that Common Street transformation forward, and the Community Foundation and the National Park Service have been exploring this idea of the BAYOU GREENBELT project and how can that actually move forward with a phase 1 building on that Contraband Bayou project that McNeese is finishing up. So similarly to that, we think Chenault and SWLA are such important economic engines for you that they need a resilience district as well. Right now you have Chenault doing great things, but they have the opportunity to do more and generate more jobs. You have SWLA running programs that are lined up with employers, but they would like to build additional, culinary institute and hospitality institute and maybe child care center and eventually housing for students. And then in the meantime, there's nowhere to get coffee, there's barely anywhere to eat lunch, and you have all these people working and learning right by Chenault and SWLA. This is one of our strongest supported projects. Again, people said, I don't necessarily spend a lot of time there, but I know that this is going to transform Southwest Louisiana. So there's some early projects. SWLA is investing in greening the parking lots, adding shade, adding solar panels, crosswalks, those types of things. And Chenault has identified water, sewer, and road improvements that are needed to open up 10 additional development sites. So they are focused on, can we get that infrastructure that's lacking, and when that comes online, can we attract new employers and new development to build out 10 more sites at SWLA? I think it's very clear, again, that this has an economic development impact and an opportunity to expand the workforce and education opportunities in this region. There's also an opportunity to connect to BAYOU GREENBELT. So as Cayuchi Coulee becomes part of the BAYOU GREENBELT with a trail in the future, Legion Street is not that far. So we should be thinking about a walking and biking path along Legion Street and how some of that underutilized property turns into these uses that make it a more engaging district, all while thinking about drainage, resiliency, and sustainability. So next steps there is about prioritizing that infrastructure so that we can unlock that additional economic development potential. So those 6 projects were location specific. They still have applications outside of those areas, but the next 4 are truly for everywhere. And I know Strong Downtowns is near and dear to the cities and towns in West Calcasieu. We think this is a huge opportunity for you all to have a piece of what you desire and what you deserve, which are great places, to go out to dinner or breakfast, or to co-locate your small business, or to create more jobs and housing in your region. Strong Downtowns, also one of the highest supported projects. 97% of people say thumbs up, this is going to impact our region. It's also something we think you can get started fairly quickly. We looked at 2 kit of parts, one for transforming streets in downtown, like South Huntington, and another for adding festival parks and spaces for your celebrations and your cultural gatherings, which are so specific and special to Southwest Louisiana. And there are funding sources coming down the road that are going to apply to both of those. Some of your hazard mitigation dollars could make a space that doubles as drainage and green infrastructure. That Infrastructure Act is going to have money for safe, walkable streets. Those are the exact types of projects that are going to make your downtown strong. And then we need to partner with the chambers and the Economic Development Alliance and your cities and your mayor's offices and the parishes to continue to support and attract small businesses and entrepreneurs to build their businesses in your downtowns, again, making them the best places that they can be and your true economic engines in West Calcasieu and all throughout the region. Good news, like we said, we've got great partners at the table and some clear funding sources that we believe are going to allow you to do these things in the near future. It has an economic development impact in terms of jobs and businesses in your region. You can build housing in downtown that's walkable to amenities and restaurants. You can also build those festival parks that are places for gathering, also places for drainage, new streets, that's infrastructure, and we just think this is an amazing opportunity for Calcasieu Parish. The 8th project are called Community Resilience Hubs. I'm personally excited about this one. This is something that may not seem that important until you've experienced a disaster. And you need to know, where can I go to get food and water? Where can I go to cool off when I'm working on my house and it's 90+ degrees? Where can I charge my phone? Where can I go to make a phone call? We're proposing these community resilience hubs in small communities as well as some of your big communities where there are populations who may not be close to a center like this, right? You have this amazing facility, but your parish is very large, and people don't want to drive all the way across Calcasieu or Cameron Parish to get to one of those central places. So 88% of people said, this makes a lot of sense. 8% of people said, I want to learn more about this. So we've got some education to do on the community resilience hubs. In Blue Sky Days, these can be informal community centers for dance recitals and baby showers, for pickup games of soccer, and playgrounds for children. There's also a methodology here for different sizes of these. They could be small for less than 1,000 people and the cost is lower, or maybe they're medium-sized or large-sized serving more people. The good news here is that there are some clear funding sources for these, and we think they could make a big difference, like we said, both in disaster times and non-disaster times. The FEMA community storm shelter funding, we believe, can sometimes cover up to 75% of the cost of these facilities, either in new locations or hardening and adding on to buildings that already exist, so that we're not wasting resources and building a bunch of new buildings if there are existing community centers or portions of schools or libraries that could be transformed. And then you may be able to use your disaster recovery dollars to cover your local match. So these are projects that FEMA wants to see happen, that we can actually identify locations for and move forward in a quick way. And they're going to create resiliency, social resiliency, and physical resiliency in your neighborhoods and communities. Stantec and UDA have taken your input from March and identified the locations that we think are in need of these community resilience hubs. Some are brand new facilities, some are, like we said, adding on to and hardening existing facilities, and we hope you'll go to that board tonight and tell the team members there, do you think these are the right places? Do you think we missed something? So please tell us what you think. The 9th project is the Resilient Housing Toolkit. This was a toolkit that Ashley on our team developed that takes hundreds of pages of homeowner recommendations from FEMA and other best practice documents, puts it into a 20-page, easy to use, easy to understand document. So some of the things are targeted at reducing your flood insurance under the new FEMA Risk 2.0. So that whole program has changed. It can be difficult to understand. This is a fairly clear summary of what decisions are going to impact the outcome of your flood insurance and which ones might not. But that being said, even if something doesn't reduce your flood insurance, you may still want to consider doing it, making your roof built to a higher wind standard, or putting rigid insulation in so that if you have flooding, it doesn't become moldy or rot. So those are things that make your home safer and healthier to live in, that sometimes don't add a lot of cost. And we want everyone to know that these are options and to be able to make those decisions before a disaster, if you're doing home repairs, or afterwards to make it safer for the next time around. A lot of strong support for this project as well. And we would love to see a demonstration project of about 20 resilient homes built. This site that we're looking at is in North Lake Charles, but there could be many sites, and we encourage your towns and cities to identify, we've got a great site. We think we could build 6 resilient homes there. Let's get these demonstration projects up and running so that in 2 to 5 years, people can actually go and tour them and say, these homes are beautiful and they're also more resilient. How can I model my home off of them? Some great funding sources and partners for this project, and Ashley has a couple printed copies here with us tonight. But the good news is that the Resilient Housing Toolkit is available online. You can view it online. You can also download it so that you can have all of those resources, and the QR code and the link are on the board. We hope you'll download that and start using it. And then the final project, I'm gonna go back. Got it? The final project is about the Redevelopment Authority. We heard that adjudicated property, vacant, abandoned, underused property is an issue, especially along the I-10 corridor, but also after you have additional disasters. This is something that is extremely challenging in your state. We know that. But we also know that if we don't address it, it's going to continue to compound. 90% of people said it's critical and it's going to positively impact the region. So very strong support, and those votes did not just come from Lake Charles. These are people in both parishes saying, it's not in my area that I'm in every day, but if we don't fix this, then employers that are coming here, potential retailers that are coming here, people who might invest in downtown are not going to come. So we have to work together to address this issue. We've put together a plan for the Redevelopment Authority based on input from key stakeholders that is around establishing a new authority that's functioning, making sure it's funded and staffed and has a governing board, and then allowing and enabling that development authority to start tracking properties, understanding where they're at in the process, as well as keeping them clean and green, and moving them through the adjudication process where they can. Some properties are stuck, some are more difficult than others, but there are categories of them that can begin to move down that road and follow every legal process for the curing the titles and eventually, hopefully, getting them back into uses. So you can read all of the details there as you move around tonight. And then in the big picture, I just wanted to share a few things that we also have these blue ways and green ways at the regional level that we think are exciting. One of the ideas that came up is using old Highway 171 to create kind of a green bypass bike trail to Moss Bluff, or the idea of a kayak route from Lake Arthur to Chenier. And these things in the region, again, this is your ecotourism, but also all of you who live here being able to get out and enjoy these beautiful natural resources, which are so incredibly special to your region. And then the National Park Service has been working with the Community Foundation on what we call BAYOU GREENBELT, which is a loop running down Cayuchi Coulee and through Contraband Bayou and back up through the lake and river of bikeways, trails, waterways, kayak and other boat routes, and an interconnected system that can address drainage and also create an amazing quality of life resource and economic development generator for your region. And then tonight we also have the Green Infrastructure Center with us here. They have received a grant from the City of Lake Charles to look at tree coverage and what that means for reducing heat islands, what it means for soil retention, and how those trees can actually be infrastructure in your region that when you lose them after a storm, we can use the funding that comes through hazard mitigation grants to put those trees back. So they have some recommendations that cities and parishes can adopt in their ordinances to help you protect your trees, which are such an important natural and cultural resource in Southwest Louisiana. So tonight, let's talk about what's next. Here we are at West Cal Event Center. We have one more meeting this week, and we hope if you have friends and neighbors who aren't here tonight or aren't able to watch on Facebook Live, we are going to be in Cameron Parish tomorrow and broadcasting that as well. So we hope that as many people will come out as possible and help give us that input. Then we're also going to be developing the document, and the document will include all of the recommendations, and they will incorporate your feedback and input tonight. So it truly does matter what we hear from you and the fact that you are here tonight to give your thoughts. I want to acknowledge my team. We have the UDA team, Ashley and Bethany, as well as Stantec, who's been looking at infrastructure and resilience. We have Franklin Associates, who gathered us all here tonight, and we also have Dr. Richardson and Dr. Groft, who have been thinking about that economic development, in addition to many, many ambassadors and volunteers who have shown up and given your time to this process and helped bring people out to the meetings. And then, as I mentioned, we also have the Green Infrastructure Center, and AECOM is not here tonight, but they have been working with Calcasieu Parish and coordinating with our team as well. So that's the team, and those are the folks that you'll be chatting with tonight. Before you leave on your way out, there's going to be an exit survey, and we are going to ask you to think about how important each of these projects are to you. It doesn't have to be in order of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, but which ones are your top priorities, which ones are your middle priorities, and which are your lower priorities. And this is going to help us tell your elected officials and your parish and your cities how to move forward. So the room is organized with the big picture projects here, and then project 1, starts on this side and then all the way around the room as you leave out the door here. So thank you again. We can't wait to talk with you, and see you in a bit.